Before I even get into this video, I just need y'all to see this clip. Just watch. Oh yeah, Thunderclap is back. How's it going, YouTube? Chill here. In today's video, we're going to be going over the exotic point contact cannon brace and a build with it because it recently got buffed and you need to use this exotic. I'm telling you right now, it's too much goddamn fun. So we're going to be going over the buff that happened to the exotic, an effective way to use the exotic in your playstyle, armor mods for your build, weapon pairings as well, and of course the aspect of fragments that you would use in coordination with that, and artifact mods as well, since the Act 2 artifact mods are reliant on melees and being close combat. So be sure to like and subscribe. Hopefully you'll enjoy this, and let's get into it. Going over the exotic trait is called Hammer of the Gods. Defeating targets with your Thunderclap melee restores melee energy. Targets near you when you use your Thunderclap suffer lightning strikes and become jolted. Being amplified increases the damage of these lightning strikes. Now the buff that Bungie gave to this exotic is that its lightning strikes now do 100% increased damage over base, up from 50%, and the lightning strike final blows now also refund melee energy on top of your Thunderclap final blows, giving you melee energy back as well. However, they did reduce the Thunderclap refund by 10% to compensate for the increased energy gains on average, but overall, you're having a lot more melee energy gains back to you just for using this exotic. Going based off the information that we just saw, it looks like we get roughly about 10% melee energy back for every Thunderclap elimination, on top of every Lightning Strike elimination as well. While it doesn't seem like a lot, remembering that Thunderclap is a massive AoE blast in front of you that can get multiple adds in a single strike, as well as the lightning strikes cast around you because of point contact cannon brace, you could theoretically get your full melee back from one Thunderclap discharge. Now, if you aren't aware how Thunderclap works, holding down your melee button will plant your feet on the ground and begin to charge your fist with arc energy. Releasing it will unleash a devastating blast in front of you, dealing damage that increases with longer charge time. Now, if you were just to use your melee at base without letting it charge up to its max potential, it does 37,638. If you do allow the time to charge it up to max, it goes up to 75,275. So given that you have several options to go ahead and use this melee ability, you can either use it to get a quick discharge for a couple of adds near you, or if there's a beefier target, you can wait the time to charge it up to the max and do one big massive blast to get them out in one shot. You have the options with that. Now, a key thing to note with Thunderclap, it does not work with 1-2 punch or bastion. I tried using them in the gameplay you're seeing right now, and unfortunately they do not increase its melee damage at all. There's only one way to increase its max damage output, but we'll get to that in the aspects portion. So going off of that, we're going to be using Thunderclap as our melee. For our class ability, we're going to be using Thruster. Now, I know you might be thinking to use Barricades instead, however, the way this playstyle works and how fast-paced it is, and you're just more in the action, just going and going and going, Thruster is more beneficial for that, especially in correlation with some of the mods that we have in this build. Of course, the jump, use whatever you want. Supers, you do have the option between Fist of Havoc or Thunderstrike, depending on what you want to use. I personally went with Fist of Havoc just to try out the new super changes, and plus with this build, you do happen to get your super very quickly. However, if you want to use Thunder Crash instead, you can go with that. Now for the grenade, we have to use Pulse Grenade. Now I know what you might be thinking, oh, what about Storm Grenade? Use that one, does really good damage, or Lightning Grenades for the jolt and all that stuff for ad clearing. You could go with that as well. However, with the aspect that we're pairing with it, we're going to be able to generate a lot of ionic traces to help feedback into our melee regen, our grenade regen, and class ability regen, so we have max ability uptime so that we can keep casting Thunderclaps over and over and over again. So that's why we're using Pulse Grenade. Now for the aspects. This is the first one that's going to allow us to increase our damage with Thunderclap. Knockout. Critically wounding a target or breaking their shield infuses your melee attacks with arc energy and increases your melee range and damage for a short time. Defeating targets with melee attacks makes you amplified and restores a portion of your health. Defeating more powerful combatants increases the amount of health restored. Now the key thing with Knockout, when you do have Knockout procced and cast Thunderclap at max charge, it goes up to 112,912 damage. That's the only way to increase your max damage output with Thunderclap. You can't use 1-2 punch, you can't use Bastion or any other ways of going about it. Of course, debuffs applied to enemies will increase its damage as well, but to buff it specifically, Knockout's the only way. Now for the second aspect, we're using Touch of Thunder. This one adds special benefits to certain arc grenades in the Titan kit. The specific one we're going is Pulse Grenade. Creates ionic traces periodically as it damages targets and increases its damage over time. Now that increase the damage over pulse grenades is very, very lethal. I actually used that way back when I did contest Root of Nightmares for Nezarec, and I was out DPSing everyone with just the grenades by themselves and Armamentarium. So pulse grenades are actually very good as far as DPS options. Plus the Ionic Traces on top of that to help fuel your ability cycle is very, very good. So that's why we're going with that one to help feed our gameplay loop up, getting those abilities up as much as possible. So the first fragment we have is Spark of Feedback to temporarily increase our melee damage when we take melee damage. Now, that also does not buff our Thunderclap damage. However, with Knockout, it does buff our base melee damage infused with the Arc Lightning from Knockout. So it does have benefits with that, plus it's a plus 10 to resilience, so it helps build up our resistance for this build. The second fragment we're using is Spark of Magnitude. Your Lingering Arc Grenades, Lightning Grenade, Pulse Grenade, and Storm Grenade have extended durations. Pairing that with Pulse Grenade and Touch of Thunder so that we have a longer going Pulse Grenade to create even more Ionic Traces than we normally would, so that way we can keep playing into that gameplay loop of getting our abilities back even more. The next one is just for some survivability, Spark of Resistance. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. Given the playstyle of Arc and Thunderclap, you're going to be up and close and personal with all the action. You're going to be into the fray. There's going to be a bunch of ads surrounding you. You're going to have this up pretty consistently in your engagement. So Spark of Resistance is just a little added survivability with this, plus a plus 10 to strength to help feedback our melee regains on top of that. Now the last one is Spark of Amplitude. Rapidly defeating targets while you are amplified creates a orb of power. Given the playstyle, we're always going to be amplified from either our Thunderclap melee, our regular knockout melees, and pulse grenade eliminations on top of arc rapid fire weapon kills. We're always going to be amplified and be able to create an orb of power. However, it is on a cooldown, but we're able to generate a lot of orbs to help build back our super and pair with certain mods on our armor, help feedback our abilities even more, and the playstyle of getting our melees back faster and faster and faster. So Spark of Amplitude is the best one. However, if you want to use a different one, you can also go with Spark of Ions for creating a Ionic Trace when defeating a jolted target. If you pair that with our jolting weapons, that's another way to go about it. But ideally, the Orb of Power one is more beneficial for the gameplay loop that we're going with this build. So with this, you have a general idea of how the build's going to work. You're going to use your Thunderclap melee to get in there. You're going to get a lot of added clears on top of that. You might get roughly about 50% to 60% on average your melee back, but there's ways to get around that so that way you have it up at all times, or pretty much either 80% or 100%. Or you might be in the situation where you might have 50% melee energy, but you get it back after just 2 or 3 eliminations. So for the helmet, we're using Harmonic Siphon when paired with an Arc Super. Rapid Arc Final Blows create an Orb of Power, another way to generate orbs. We're also using Hands-On to get some super energy on melee kills. And the last mod's free for whatever you want it to do. You can double stack on Hands-On if you have the space, or you could do double Harmonic Siphon so that way those orbs are a little bit bigger and give you a little bit more energy back for your super. Now for point contact cannon brace, we're using 2 very key mods for this build. First one is Heavy-Handed, allowing our melee final blows to create orbs of power that we're using as well with the build to help fuel our ability cycles. The second one is Melee Kickstart. Whenever casting your melee, depending on how many armor charges you have, refunds a portion of your melee energy back to you. So that way, every time we cast our Thunderclap melee, we're getting some energy returns back to us. Now, a while ago, they did nerf it to where you don't get as much as you normally would have beforehand. However, the way I have this build set up, you'll be able to get back a roughly about 20% melee energy guaranteed for just casting it, not even from the eliminations on top of that. Now moving to the chest piece, the key mod that we want here is Charged Up to increase our max number of stacks of armor charge up by 1 to a max of 4. Now the other mods, you can use whatever resistance you'd rather use. However, we do need Charged Up for this build. When at max stacks of 4 with Heavy-Handed, that contributes to our 20% melee energy back whenever casting it with those full armor charges. Now, while we have many ways to generate orbs already, it might seem pretty tedious to go out and find 4 different orbs to pick up before casting your melee attack. This is where the leg mod comes in, stacks on stacks. With stack on stacks, every time you pick up an orb of power grants you an additional stack of armor charge. So every time you pick up an orb, you get 2 stacks instead of 1, thus reducing how many orbs you need to pick up to 2 to get the max stacks to get the 20% melee energy back whenever you cast your Thunderclap. Now the other 2 mods are actually very key for survivability and helping the melee regen as well. The other ones could be Invigoration to reduce our melee cooldown every time we pick up an Orb of Power, and Recuperation to replenish our health every time you do pick up an orb. That way, every time you pick up that orb, you get an instant chunk of health. Now, I know some people might be saying to go with Better Already. However, due to Better Already being regeneration and not just an instant chunk, if you get shot when that regeneration starts, it immediately cuts it off and you lose the full benefits that you normally would get with Better Already. So that's why Recuperation is better for just the instant chunk for instant survivability, and you don't have to worry about wondering like, oh, how did I die? You have that instant chunk, and that way it adds to your survivability. Now the class item. This is where things are going to be very important. This is where everything's going to fit in together. So for the first mod, we're using Outreach to reduce our melee cooldown when using our class ability, again playing into the thruster. The second one's going to be Reaper, so that way we can make an overpower after casting our class ability, again playing into the orbs and our class ability with thruster. Now the key one is Powerful Attraction. Automatically collects nearby orbs of power when you activate your class ability. Now, this is how your gameplay loop is going to work. You're going to go into an engagement, you're going to charge up your Thunderclap, either set it off immediately or wait till the full charge up goes off and then release. You'll get the 20% melee energy back when you have full armor charges. You'll expend that immediately. The second that charge goes off and those enemies are defeated, you'll cast your thruster. Once you cast your thruster, you'll immediately pick up any orbs you just generated, roughly about 2 to 3 every time you cast your Thunderclap, given there's not any cooldowns going on, and that way you'll immediately be back at full armor charges. Now, given the certain ad density that may be around you, you might not be back to full charge. This is where key weapons go into play, but I just want you to notice this just at base. Just for this build already, without even weapon pairings, you're having your melees back consistently, getting super regen on top of that with hands on the helmet. You're getting armor charges fast with your Thunderclap melees, on top of being amplified to create another orb of power and everything that we have set up. So you're always generating orbs of power, plus with your pulse grenade, if you toss that to a beefier target and you happen to not have your Thunderclap, chunk that there. If you don't have your thruster as well, you're getting that back fast, you're getting your melee back fast, and you're getting back that charge as well for your pulse grenade to get it back even faster. Now, to make this build even better than it already is, so given that we already know that Thunderclap does not scale with 1-2 punch or Bastion, we have the freedom to use whatever weapons we want to help build our abilities back even faster. Now, for the kinetic side, you're free to use whatever you like. However, for me, I went with Outbreak because of the new super changes being reliant on getting increased gains from damage. Outbreak with its nanites helps feed back our super energy very, very quickly with roaming supers, especially Fist of Havoc. So that way you always have your super over and over and over again when you're just doing consistent DPS. But you have that freedom to use whatever you want. Now the energy slot is very, very specific. The weapon you want to pair with that is actually Prophet of Doom. If you watch my weapon review about Prophet of Doom, you might be already aware of the PvE god roll that I recommended of Pugilist and Volt Shot. Simply for getting that kill, you get 20% melee energy, and then when you reload and get Volt Shot proc, any kills you get with the Chain Lightning with the shotgun also give 20% melee energy back as well. So that way you're feeding back into that melee loop on top of it. So getting this initial Thunderclap kill, you'll get 20% melee energy back, plus the orb pickups helping our melee cooldown with Invigoration, plus on top of point contact cannon brace for funding back our melee energy on top of the kills from Thunderclap and the lightning strikes, you'll be roughly getting 70 to 80% of your melee energy back, consistently depending on the ad density that you're clearing out in one single Thunderclap. Now, if you're a little inconsistent and still getting used to the build and want to ensure that you will always have your Thunderclap at all times, Prophet of Doom is your best friend in this case to get back that melee extremely fast, extremely rapidly, and you always have it up at all times. Now, if you don't have this shotgun, simply another Pugilist special weapon is best fitted. Ideally, Arc specifically if you can get it. However, with Prophet of Doom, I think it's the best considering the Arc synergy with Pugilist and Volt Shot. And I actually pair mine with Synergy, creating another way to make an Ionic Trace to feed back my abilities back even more. However, with this build, you can use any weapon you want in the special slot with Pugilist. Ideally, Pugilist is the key mod you're going to want to have in your energy slot. However, if you want to use a special kinetic weapon, the other weapon you could pair would be Noxious Vetiver with Pugilist and Jolting Feedback. That way you have another gameplay loop similar to Prophet of Doom except on a primary. You're not getting as much energy gains back as you would be with Prophet of Doom because it's 20% for a special, and Noxious Vetiver is a primary which would be 10% melee energy. You do have another way to get melees back with a primary. However, if you don't have Noxious Vetiver and you don't have Prophet of Doom, just simply use any Pugilist weapon you happen to have on your inventory or be able to be crafted, and you'll be fine with this build. Now, for the heavy slot, you do have freedom with this to use whatever you want. If you don't invest for souls, you can use Chill Inhibitor for DPS. However, if you do want to build into the artifact mods this season, you can use Queenbreaker's Bow for adding blind onto your targets. So this is your overall build that you'll be able to use. It's not reliant on the artifact. It's not relying on any reductions to anything. I made this build before Act 2 came out with the melee mods that came out. So I can vouch for certain that this build here does not rely on it. It only gets enhanced by the artifact mods. Now, with artifact mods, we can enhance this even more. Now, I did say to use Queenbreaker's Bow if you wanted to with this build. The reason being is that the newest artifact mod that was introduced this episode in Act 2 is Arc Compounding. Arc sources deal increased damage to blinded targets. This increases our damage by 15% to blinded targets. That also does apply with Thunderclap. So that way, if you want to increase your damage output even more with Thunderclap, you can pair it with Queenbreaker's Bow, get the blind on the target, charge up your Thunderclap, let it off, and you'll be doing that 50% increased damage on top of it. And of course, this season as well, we have plenty of Arc mods as well to help play into that. We have Trace Evidence for creating rapid final blows affected by Jolt or Blind will create Ionic Traces. If you use an Arc primary with Jolting Feedback, that's another way to go about it. Also, we have the Thick of It now introduced with this episode as well, where rapid final blows while surrounded grant you an armor charge that is not reliant on weapon kills or ability kills. It just said rapid final blows. That does also work well with point contact cannon brace to get even more armor charges. We also have curative orbs for creating an orb of power whenever you break a target shield or break a shield off a guardian using their super. That way you have another way to get more orbs on top of that for your armor charges. And of course, we do have authorized mods in melee, reducing our melee cost mods from 3 or 2 to 1. We have everything this season to make this build the strongest it could ever possibly be. However, it's not hindered by the artifact once it goes away. But this is the build in its entirety, including artifact mods if you want to pair with it. It's one of my favorite builds ever to exist. I love point contact cannon brace ever since they fixed it after Seasons of Plunder when it was originally broken in PvP. God, I hate that that was a thing. But yes, this is one of my favorite builds to ever exist. And believe you me, I'm so glad they buffed it now. You're going to have a lot of fun, believe you me. But that's going to do it for this video. Appreciate y'all for making it to the end. What do y'all think? Hopefully you're going to make this build. Let me know what you think. Keep an eye out for the next couple of videos. Right now, I'm working on a review on Grid Skipper, Ais's Care, Noxus Vetifer, and some other ones that I'm forgetting off the top of my head right now. So keep an eye out for that, as well as a build on Doomfang Pauldron with Sentinel Shield, because I'm sure y'all know by now, but it's pretty goddamn busted. So keep an eye out for that. Let me know what's the next video you want to see first off. Appreciate y'all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. And remember, keep it chill.